I never thought a text message could unravel my world, but there I was, standing in the office break room, staring at my phone in disbelief. It came from Mom, not even Dad himself. "Your father wants you to know he gave your bonus to your sister. He says, be grateful I got you the job." I read it twice, my stomach twisting into knots. We were supposed to receive our annual performance bonuses today. For the past year, I'd poured countless hours into hitting every target, forging client relationships, and spearheading new initiatives. I'd practically lived in this building. Everyone knew I was the top performer this quarter. Management had made that crystal clear in last month's meeting. The 10K bonus was my reward for that relentless work. But apparently Dad, my direct manager, the man who insisted I join his branch, had taken the money and handed it to my younger sister, Talia. She worked in the same company but in a more laid-back role and never once hit her targets. Yet Dad always treated her like royalty. My face burned with anger. Why did he think he could do that? Was he truly so dismissive of my effort that he believed I owed him gratitude for a job I was excelling at? Growing up, Talia and I were never treated as equals. She was the baby who could do no wrong. Dad bragged about her good looks, her confidence, and always gave her more allowance. Meanwhile, he said I was too serious or too bookish. Good for me, he claimed, but apparently not the shining star he wanted to show off at family gatherings. I tried to brush off the favoritism, telling myself if I worked hard, Dad would notice. Every success in school, every prize I earned, I'd run to him, hoping for a proud smile. Sometimes I got a nod, maybe a pat on the head. But Talia? She'd break a minor track record, or place in the top 50 of some local pageant, and Dad would act like she'd won an Olympic gold medal. When he persuaded me to join the family company after college, I was skeptical, but it seemed like an opportunity to finally prove my worth on his own turf. If I excelled under his watch, maybe he'd see me for who I was, a driven, skilled professional. But after that text message, I realized this wasn't about performance. Dad had stolen my bonus for Talia's sake, and I had no idea how to handle that betrayal. I stormed through the corridor, ignoring the curious stares of coworkers. Some of them already knew. The rumor mill churns fast. Dad gave your $10 to Talia? That can't be right. But the hush in the hallway suggested many suspected it was true. Dad's office door was half open. He stood behind his oversized wooden desk, flipping through papers, the phone pressed to his ear. I didn't bother knocking. The moment I entered, I blurted, "You gave my bonus to Talia?" He glanced up, covered the mouthpiece, and said, "I'll call you back," hanging up on whomever he was speaking to. Then he eyed me with the detached calm I'd grown to resent. "Yes, it's better this way." "Better for who?" I demanded. "I earned that money. You said yourself I was the top performer." His gaze hardened. "And who got you the position here in the first place? Did you forget it was me who convinced upper management to even look at your resume?" I swallowed a retort, my blood boiling. So in Dad's eyes, I owed him everything, my skills, my results, my success. And that apparently meant he could reallocate the fruits of my labor to Talia as if I had no say. Dad sighed, as if I were the unreasonable one. "Listen, I'm not saying you're unworthy. But Talia's in a rough spot right now. She got an apartment she can barely afford, and her sales numbers are dismal. She needs the money." I couldn't believe my ears. "She needs the money because she underperformed, and you're punishing me for succeeding?" Dad's lip curled in mild disgust. "Don't turn this into some soap opera. Your sister is just a little behind. And come on, you're single. Your bills are minimal. You'll manage just fine." I wanted to scream. He'd wiped away 12 months of relentless work with a few dismissive words. "You'll manage just fine." He had no idea what I'd sacrificed. My weekends, my social life, all to climb the ranks and secure this bonus. For him, it was just a matter of paternal convenience. Talia was the favorite, so she got bailed out. I pressed my palms against his desk. "Dad, if you're not going to fix this, I will." My voice shook, but I stood my ground. For once, I wanted him to see me not as the passive daughter, but as someone who refused to be walked over. He raised an eyebrow. "Go ahead, but remember who everyone listens to around here." Leaving Dad's office, I was seething. I needed to strategize. My first instinct was to walk into HR and demand an explanation. But Dad was senior, well-respected, in close contact with top leadership. They might have already been told a version of the story to cover him. I decided to speak to my direct supervisor, Mark. Although Dad managed the entire region, Mark handled day-to-day operations. Maybe he had some insight, or at least advice. I knocked on Mark's door, feeling adrenaline course through me. He greeted me with a weary smile. I explained the situation. My earned bonus, Dad's decision, Talia's undeserved payoff. Mark's expression hardened as I detailed Dad's "be grateful I got you the job" retort. Finally, he exhaled. I suspected something was off. We submitted your name for the top bonus bracket. Then your father said he wanted to reallocate resources, that Talia deserved a merit-based correction. I had no real way to question him. My stomach churned. So Mark had tried to do right by me, but Dad overrode him. Is there anything we can do to reverse this? Mark frowned. Officially, I can escalate to HR, but your dad's the regional manager, so they may side with him, unless we present serious evidence of wrongdoing. I left Mark's office with a pit in my stomach, but also a small glimmer of hope. That afternoon, Talia appeared in my cubicle doorway, feigning innocence with a sweet smile. Heard you had a chat with Dad, she said, crossing her arms. Everything okay? Her voice dripped with a mix of curiosity and smugness. I glared at her. You know exactly what that was about. She shrugged, fiddling with her nails. Look, I didn't ask him to take your bonus. But I'm not going to say no to a $10,000 windfall. Sure, you didn't encourage it, I shot back sarcastically. Talia tilted her head. I might have mentioned how stressed I was about rent. Dad was the one who decided you, being so thrifty, wouldn't miss the money. If you want to blame someone, blame him. She had a point. Dad was the root cause. Still, Talia's wide-eyed "don't blame me" performance triggered my anger. We'd grown up with her taking my clothes, my car keys, even my chance at an internship once, always with Dad's blessing. Now she'd taken my well-deserved bonus. The pattern was so blatant I wanted to scream. As she turned to leave, she tossed me a half-smile. You'll be fine. You always land on your feet, right? I watched her saunter off, seething, determined not to let them get away with this. For the rest of the week, I tried to bury my anger in work. Every time I processed a new sale or finalized a contract, though, I'd get this gnawing reminder. They can just take away my rewards again. It was as if a giant neon sign hung over my head. No matter how hard you work, your father can override you. I tried to keep my performance from slipping. I told myself I wouldn't give them an excuse to call me dramatic or incompetent. Yet that the frustration bled into my personal life. My best friend Vanessa noticed. Your messages are so short lately. You okay? I confided the whole fiasco. She was livid. What does your father think this teaches you? That Talia can mooch off everyone forever? Yes, I sighed. Exactly. And I'm stuck because Dad's influence is massive. Vanessa, more direct than me, said, you can't just accept this. You need to fight back or find a better position. They don't deserve your talent. Her words sparked something. Leaving was an option. But part of me still wanted justice. I didn't just want to run away. I wanted them to face consequences for this blatant unfairness. A week later, Mark pulled me aside, a conspiratorial look on his face. I've been digging, he whispered. You're not the only one whose bonus got reallocated this year. My eyebrows shot up. Wait, Dad did this to other people? Mark nodded. He systematically siphoned from certain employees' bonuses and rerouted them into Talia's department, claims it's part of an incentive program. But that's not how incentives are authorized. HR never signed off. A flicker of hope ignited in my chest. This was bigger than just me. If Dad had done this to multiple employees without approval, it was a legitimate violation of company policy. Possibly unethical or even illegal if the funds were misrepresented. Mark dropped a file on my desk. I gathered what I could. There's an internal ledger showing bonus reassignments. Look how Talia's name pops up repeatedly. This could be your evidence. I flipped through the pages, my pulse pounding. Talia had received not just my 10 gale, but sums that totaled almost double that from other employees. The pattern was glaring, and Dad's signature was on each line. I locked eyes with Mark. So if we take this to HR, he nodded firmly, they'll have no choice but to investigate. The next day, Mark and I marched into HR, file in hand. The director, Alicia, eyed us curiously. What can I do for you? We explained the situation, how Dad, in his capacity as regional manager, had diverted multiple bonuses toward Talia's department, citing a non-existent incentive program. Mark laid out the spreadsheet, highlighting each questionable entry. Alicia's brows knitted in concern. "And Talia is his daughter?" Alicia clarified. "Yes," I said. "And some of those funds were specifically my bonus, which I rightfully earned." Alicia leaned back, steepling her fingers. "That's a serious accusation. Do we have any internal emails approving these reassignments?" Mark looked grim. "None that we can find. He seems to have done it all by direct manager overrides, leveraging his position." Alicia examined the documents. "We'll have to launch a formal probe. However, your father is a longtime senior manager here. This won't be easy. He has a sterling reputation with the higher-ups." I stiffened. "So was I supposed to let him get away with it?" She shook her head. "Absolutely not. But be prepared, when word gets out, it'll trigger serious pushback. Company politics can get ugly." We left the meeting with a strange mix of dread and determination. The investigation had begun. We couldn't turn back now. It didn't take long for Dad to catch wind of the brewing investigation. By the following morning, I spotted him marching through the hallway, shoulders rigid, heading straight for my cubicle. He glared at Mark's office door as he passed, but Mark wasn't inside. When he reached me, his tone was ice. "You're attacking me through HR now? Throwing your own father under the bus?" I swallowed. "I'm just revealing the truth. You can't illegally reassign bonuses to Talia." He scoffed, stepping closer so only I could hear. "You think you're so righteous. You have no clue how this company works. If you try to sabotage me, you'll sabotage yourself." My heart pounded. "I'm not sabotaging anyone. I'm standing up for what's right." The words sounded braver than I felt. He narrowed his eyes. "You want credit for your success so badly you'd destroy your own family's name?" "Only you are responsible for your own actions," I fired back. His jaw twitched. "You're ungrateful. This is how you repay me for bringing you in and giving you everything?" I had no response to that, mostly because it was absurd. Dad turned on his heel and marched off, leaving me shaken. But a sliver of stubborn resolve flared inside me. I'd come too far to back down now. By week's end, HR began interviewing employees about their bonuses. Rumors flooded the office. Some staff who lost money were furious, but afraid to speak. Others wanted to stay out of it, fearing Dad's retaliation. Talia's name was whispered in the hallways. People looked at me with new respect or curiosity, someone who dared to challenge the boss. I overheard 2 coworkers in the break room. "She's risking her entire career going against him." "Yeah, but if he's truly funneling money to Talia, it's so messed up." At home, Mom bombarded me with calls. "Your father is livid. Why couldn't you handle this privately?" she scolded, protective of him as always. "He's done so much for you, just talk it out." I wished it were that simple. But talking it out had failed the moment Dad refused to fix his mistake. He was the one who reallocated the funds behind everyone's back, not me. I refused to let him silence me with guilt. I realized that I had a choice: keep pushing through the storm or crumble under familial pressure. My chest felt tight. I hated fighting Dad, but I couldn't allow him to keep disrespecting me and everyone else this way. The day after, Talia waltzed up to my desk, her expression stormy. "You went to HR about Dad?" she hissed, voice trembling with indignation. "How could you?" "How could I?" I fired back, rising from my seat. "You benefited from stolen bonuses. Don't pretend you didn't know about it." She squared her shoulders. "Dad said the company owed me an incentive for my brand-building efforts. Maybe my results aren't the same as yours, but I do plenty behind the scenes." I nearly laughed. "You can't be serious. Those behind-the-scenes efforts are non-existent. You barely show up on time." Talia bristled. "I can't believe you'd throw your own sister under the bus. What do you gain from humiliating us? We're your family." Words stuck in my throat. She was twisting the narrative, making me the villain. "I'm not humiliating anyone. Dad broke company policy. It's that simple." She crossed her arms, eyes glistening like she might cry. "Do you enjoy being morally righteous? Because it's about to ruin Dad's reputation. And guess whose reputation suffers when you tarnish the family name?" She stabbed a finger at me. "Yours." With that, she stormed away, leaving me trembling, uncertain, but still resolute. 2 days later, I received a formal email. Please report to the HR conference room for a follow-up interview regarding your complaint. The moment I saw Alicia's name, my heart pounded. If they were interviewing me again, it meant the investigation was gathering momentum. I entered the conference room to find Alicia seated with two other HR reps. One was busy arranging documents on the table. "We want to clarify a few points," Alicia began calmly. "We've interviewed a few staff members who corroborated your claim. But your father claims you're holding a grudge and that these allegations are exaggerated." My stomach twisted. He was playing the vindictive daughter card. I carefully outlined the chain of events: how Dad personally told me he reassigned my bonus to Talia, how Mark discovered other suspicious reassignments, the ledger listing Talia's repeated bonus payouts. I also explained how Dad threatened me to stay quiet. When I finished, Alicia nodded slowly. "We have enough to expand this case. We might bring in upper-level executives or even external auditors, since large sums of money may have been misdirected." A swirl of relief and anxiety filled me. If upper management or external parties got involved, Dad's actions could blow up in a very public way. There'd be no turning back. That evening, Mark called me. "Heads up," he warned. "I overheard your father telling senior execs that you've been on a witch hunt to undermine him, possibly in an attempt to angle for his position. He's painting you as an overly ambitious child who's lashing out." My hands clenched the phone. "He's lying. This isn't about taking his job, it's about fairness." Mark sighed. "I know, but he's influential. Some execs might buy his story if they don't see hard evidence. You'll need to stay calm and present your facts." Suddenly, the magnitude of Dad's assault struck me. He was using every trick to dismiss me as an envious daughter. If he succeeded, I might lose the moral high ground in the eyes of leadership. My carefully built career could suffer, all because Dad refused to accept wrongdoing. I thanked Mark, hung up, and stared at the ceiling. My father had forced me into a battle. Either let him tarnish my credibility, or fight for the truth. The question was, how far was I willing to go to prove the truth if it meant risking a total family rupture? The answer came swiftly. I was done letting him overshadow me. I'd see this through. The next morning, I approached 3 colleagues who also lost portions of their bonuses: Aisha from marketing, Leon from sales, and Jillian from finance. They'd privately grumbled about Dad's nepotism, but hadn't dared to speak publicly. I invited them to coffee in the nearby cafe, hoping to form a united front. Over steaming mugs, I explained how HR was intensifying the investigation. "But if Dad convinces the higher-ups this is just me lashing out, he'll get off scot-free." Aisha frowned. "He took $2,000 for my commission payout and gave me some excuse about budget constraints, but then Talia posted about her new person spa day." She shook her head. "I can't stomach it anymore." Leon rubbed his temples. "I have a family to support. I can't risk losing my job, but if I don't say something, I'm letting him walk over us all. It's not right." Jillian quietly piped up. "I'm in. I'll testify." A surge of relief coursed through me. With more voices, it was harder for Dad to brand me as the lone troublemaker. We agreed to coordinate with HR, sharing statements and evidence. For the first time, I felt the beginnings of a real alliance against this injustice. Mark arranged a meeting with 2 upper management members, Karen, the VP of Operations, and Winston, the CFO. I was invited to lay out my findings. Mark would serve as a witness. My nerves sizzled as I entered the executive conference room. This could be the turning point. Karen began. "Your father's been with us for over 2 decades, has an excellent track record. These are serious allegations, so we need clarity." I nodded, launched a PowerPoint I'd prepared. Slide after slide showed the documented reassignments, amounts removed from employees' bonuses, the exact ledger codes, and Talia's department's subsequent increases. Each case lacks any formal approval. We also have employees willing to testify they were misled about their payouts. Winston flipped through the printed sheets. "This is significant. If proven, it suggests nepotism and possible misappropriation of funds." Mark added, "I can vouch for her performance. She genuinely earned the top bonus. Her father admitted to overriding it personally." Karen's stern gaze flicked between us. "We'll have to question your father and Talia directly, as well as cross-check the finance records. If what you're showing is accurate, we're looking at policy violations at the least, potential fraud at worst." Hearing fraud was jarring, but it validated the seriousness. Dad might face real consequences if guilt was confirmed. I just hoped upper management would have the backbone to follow through. Amid the escalating investigation, Mom insisted on hosting a family dinner to calm the situation. It felt like a trap, but I went out of respect. The moment I stepped inside my parents' home, I sensed the tension. Talia was perched on the couch, arms crossed, refusing to look at me. Dad was in the kitchen, slicing roast beef with unsettling calm. Mom ushered me to the dining table. "Let's talk this out," she pleaded, forcing a smile. "We're family, after all." Dad joined us, setting the platter down. He cleared his throat. "Daughter, we need to find a resolution without involving outsiders any further. You realize a scandal hurts all of us, right?" Talia muttered. "Especially me," as though she was the victim. I bristled. "You started this by stealing my bonus. Then I found out you did it to others too." Dad's voice hardened. "Watch your words. Calling it stealing is extreme. This was a reallocation for the good of the department." "Dad," I said, voice shaking, "you're in trouble for a reason. I can't just sweep it under the rug." Mom's eyes darted between us, tears glistening. "Can't we fix this privately? Apologies, reimbursements, something that won't ruin your father's legacy?" I felt a pang, but I stood my ground. "I'm sorry, Mom, but the investigation's already rolling. I won't sabotage the truth to protect him." I drove home from that dinner with my emotions swirling. Mom's teary eyes haunted me. Despite everything, Dad was still my father, Talia was my sister, and we were fracturing. A gnawing sense of guilt tugged at me. Was I truly ruining the family name, as Talia accused? But then I remembered the countless nights I'd worked so hard, only to watch Dad hand my achievements to Talia. The co-workers who lost money they needed for rent, medical bills, or supporting families. The principle was bigger than my personal feud. This was about workplace integrity and my own self-worth. I pulled into my driveway and just sat in the car, taking slow breaths. My phone buzzed with a message from Leon. "Thank you for standing up for us. We're behind you." A gentle reminder that I wasn't alone. Another from Aisha. "We'll do our official statements next week. Hopefully this helps your case." That warmth of solidarity steadied me. Yes, it hurt my family dynamics, but letting Dad keep abusing his power would be worse. At some point, standing up for justice meant risking heartbreak. I quietly reaffirmed, I won't back down. A company-wide announcement soon stated there would be an internal compliance review of the regional manager's bonus allocations. Everyone knew it targeted Dad. Talia retreated, taking suspicious sick days. Dad tried to maintain a facade of normalcy, but his tight-lipped stares told me everything. When the hearing date arrived, I walked into the formal boardroom with Mark, Isha, Leon, and Gillian. Dad and Talia were seated opposite us, alongside their own supporters. Two managers who were longtime friends of Dad. An external compliance officer led the session. "We'll hear testimony, review evidence, and determine if policy or legal violations occurred. Let's keep this professional." One by one, we explained how our bonuses were changed. Each person described the suspicious lack of documentation. Mark confirmed the official spreadsheets never matched Dad's final payout orders. The compliance officer took extensive notes. Then it was Dad's turn to respond. He insisted his actions were managerial prerogative, and that Talia's role was crucial but unrecognized. Talia stared at the table, saying little, except to reaffirm Dad's statements that she deserved a bigger cut. At the end, the compliance officer said they would deliberate. Dad and Talia left quickly, but not before Dad tossed me a glare that could freeze fire. The waiting game began. A week passed before the compliance officer's official findings were released. The final report concluded Dad acted outside company guidelines, redirecting funds without authorization. Talia's repeated bonus boosts were deemed unwarranted, lacking performance metrics. My phone buzzed relentlessly as colleagues forwarded me highlights of the confidential report. The recommended disciplinary action: Dad should reimburse the misallocated amounts, face demotion, or potential termination, pending a final executive decision. Talia's involvement was labeled beneficiary of unauthorized funds, but official discipline for her was unclear, since she was subordinate in this scenario, though she might be required to return the ill-gotten money. Reading it, I felt a swirl of relief, validation, and sadness. My father, once the region's unstoppable figure, was now formally implicated. For so long, he lorded his influence over me, but the truth prevailed. I braced for what might happen next. Dad still had connections, and the final call lay with top executives. But the compliance officer's clear condemnation was a giant step toward justice. No matter how they spun it, Dad's wrongdoing was out in the open. I was in the middle of drafting a client proposal when Dad showed up at my desk, expression urgent. "Office. Now," he snapped. I followed him to the vacant break room, where he scanned to ensure we were alone. "Listen carefully," he said in a hushed tone. "I'll be meeting the executive board tomorrow. If I come clean, they might show mercy. If I'm fired, do you think this brand will keep you? They'll blame the drama on you too." His words sent a chill down my spine. I knew it was a scare tactic, but I couldn't dismiss the possibility. "And what do you want me to do?" I asked quietly. He pursed his lips. "Retract your complaint, or at least publicly support me. Tell them you misunderstood the reassignments. If you do that, I'll cover your lost bonus, plus more. We can bury this." My chest tightened. He was still trying to buy my silence. "That won't fix the harm you caused others." He frowned. "Fine, I'll reimburse them too. But we keep this out of the official record. You know what's good for you, right?" I looked into his eyes, recalling all the times he'd undermined me. Quietly, I replied, "I won't lie for you." His face darkened, but I stood firm and walked away. The executive board convened behind closed doors. Mark told me they deliberated for hours, hearing Dad's side, reviewing the compliance report. Then they summoned Dad alone for a final interview. By early evening, I stood in my cubicle, phone in hand, refreshing my email. At exactly 6:23 p.m., a corporate-wide memo hit my inbox. Effective immediately, Dad's name is stepping down from his position as regional manager. He will remain an employee in a reduced capacity, while the company arranges further restitution for affected parties. I read the statement twice. Stepping down from his position. The official language softened the blow. He wasn't outright fired, but he was demoted, his managerial authority stripped. They were forcing him to repay the misallocated bonuses. Talia's status was unmentioned, so presumably she'd lose any future favoritism, but remain employed unless another wave of discipline followed. Relief flooded me. He hadn't escaped this. The high horse he once rode had crumbled beneath him. Mark stuck his head into my cubicle. "You did it. He's out." I exhaled, tears stinging my eyes. 12 months of hard work overshadowed by nepotism had finally been acknowledged. Yet I couldn't call it a victory parade. My father's downfall had come at a massive personal cost. The following days were surreal. Dad was technically still around but was relegated to a modest office far from the region's leadership corridor. Whispers followed him everywhere. Talia sulked, ignoring me at every turn. But co-workers affected by his corruption quietly thanked me. Isha cornered me near the water cooler, beaming. They credited the missing $2,000 back into my account. "I never thought I'd see that money. Thank you." Leon gave me a relieved grin. "I got my bonus paid in full, just in time for my kid's birthday. I owe you big." Jillian was equally appreciative, saying the company assured her a correction was on the way. The knowledge that real people benefited from my stand warmed my heart. I felt vindicated, proud that I hadn't let Dad's intimidation stop me. Still, I felt conflicted about Dad's fate. Whenever I glimpsed his bent figure in the hallway, once so commanding, my heart wrenched. But I reminded myself he'd chosen this path. The entire ordeal demonstrated the consequence of short-sighted favoritism. He'd put Talia above everything, and it backfired in the harshest way. Mom's tearful voice on the phone was almost too much to bear. "He's humiliated," she wailed. "Decades of service, undone. He rarely speaks. Why couldn't you just talk to him one last time?" I closed my eyes. "Mom, I did talk to him. He refused to fix his actions. He wanted me to lie to the board." She sniffled. "He's always been proud. Maybe that got in the way. But he's your father. He provided so much for you. And he's only human." Her words tugged at my guilt. I remembered him teaching me to ride a bike, cheering at my school play. But I also remembered how many times he withheld praise or overshadowed my achievements. This was never just about a single mistake. It was a pattern of disregard, culminating in a huge breach of trust. "I love him," I said softly, "but I can't excuse what he did. I was loyal for years. He left me no choice." Mom sighed shakily. What about Talia? She won't speak to any of us. She says she's moving out of state. I swallowed. It seemed the family was shattering. Despite the heartbreak, I knew letting Dad's wrongdoings slide wasn't an option. Some truths, once exposed, changed everything. Weeks later, life settled into a strange new normal. Dad was no longer my boss. He'd been moved to a lower role, rumored to be transferring soon. Talia kept to herself, hardly visible in the office, likely searching for an out. The tension of those final months had dissipated, replaced by quiet acceptance. With my bonus finally restored, I decided to invest part of it in a professional development course. I also took a short vacation, my first real break in years, to clear my head. While relaxing on a secluded beach, I reflected on everything. The betrayal, the battle, the fractured family dinners, the eventual outcome. In the end, I felt lighter. Not because Dad's demotion brought me joy, but because I'd proven to myself and to everyone else that I had worth beyond my father's permission. I had the courage to stand for what was right, even when the cost was personal. Returning to work after that trip, Mark greeted me with a grin. He hinted at a potential promotion. Leadership recognized my integrity and performance. My pulse quickened at the idea of forging my own path, free from Dad's shadow. I still loved my family, but I couldn't sacrifice my self-respect or fairness to maintain a broken status quo. Standing by my cubicle, I looked at the nameplate with fresh pride. I earned this. Dad gave my 10K bonus to my sister, but in the aftermath, I gained something far more valuable. The unshakable conviction that I could and would build my own legacy.